This game transforms survival horror gaming into a work of art. Given its shoddy production standards, antiquated controls, and general craziness, it's tempting to dismiss Deadly Premonition as, "It's so awful, it's wonderful," as if this eerie and bizarre horror adventure is interesting because it's so ludicrously and horribly mistaken. However, you should have no such illusions. Deadly Premonition is good because it is actually good. The game's flaws, inappropriate sound effects, shoddy aesthetics, and an unrealistic city map cannot be overlooked. These and other components scream cheap game, and rightly so, given the game's $20 price tag. When you understand that Deadly Premonition has one of video gaming's most prized characteristics, unpredictability, the flaws and frailties gradually fade away. And just as the plot and gameplay cover a wide range of topics, so will your emotions, which will be tossed around by amusing characters, unexpected turns, and touching revelations that will affect all but the most jaded players. The outdated gameplay mechanics and narrative peculiarities of Deadly Premonition would be comical, if not pitiful, in most games. In context, however, they combine to produce a truly unique experience that borrows from a variety of sources, but is unlike any other. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Rethink your intuitions. Deadly Premonition 2010. You play as Agent York, a tough guy FBI agent who's been dispatched to the sleepy town of Greenvale to look into a murder. The bizarre presentation begins right away. After a vehicle accident, creatures from another dimension attack you. The game starts with a set of twins discovering a mutilated body hung from a tree. You start in a surreal chamber covered with falling crimson leaves, and it doesn't take long for demons from another realm to assault you. The investigation will commence from there. Greenvale's eccentric residents will be presented to you. You'll be perplexed as to why Agent York has an imaginary companion named Zach. He passes his time conversing with him. You'll look for clues and walk around the town, playing mini-games like auto races and fishing. In comparison to what people expected the game to deliver, the game Deadly Premonition makes a decent first impression. York is looking into the death of Anna Graham, an 18-year-old girl from Greenvale, Washington, in the United States. He accepts the case because of the nature of the crime, a ritualistic murder of a young woman with red seeds found on or near the body, similar to a succession of such other homicides around the country. York's contemptuous attitude toward the locals, his strange manner, and habit of interrupting talks to offer advice to an unseen individual referred to as Zach causes a lot of trouble. He is aided by the town sheriff, who has been traumatized by childhood abuse, and the deputy sheriff, who becomes York's love interest. Furthermore, York is frequently ambushed and assaulted by the raincoat killer, who, according to the local legend, only kills when it rains. Meanwhile, Anna's close friends Becky, Diane, and Becky's elder sister, an art gallery owner, are murdered in a similar manner, with a mark left nearby that York thinks is an upside-down peace symbol. He discovers that the plants that produce the red seeds are found in Greenvale, as well as the presence of two raincoat killers. What follows are unprecedented events which make the game a truly enjoyable experience. Story-wise, we would like you to soak in that journey by yourself. There is no free camera movement, and you can't walk while using weapons or reloading, making the gameplay feel like a derivative of Resident Evil. The battle speech is arguably good, particularly that of the enemy when they die fighting. However, the visuals make this game appear to be a typical PS2 game. Things improve dramatically after you realize that the game's tale and weird sense of humor are more than sufficient to compensate for the game's technological flaws. However, during the gameplay of Deadly Premonition, individuals have experienced dissatisfaction with the tempo. Driving from one end of town to the other, as you'll be compelled to do several times, is excruciatingly slow, as does switching from one screen to the next. Every time you pick up an object, The game will make a slow transition. The wacky characters and bizarre plot are both entertaining. There are a few game aspects that add to the appeal of the Deadly Premonition, such as a beard that grows on Agent York if you don't shave it, else flies will begin to swarm around you, and also if you don't change suits frequently enough. The voice acting during discussions is also quite good, which is surprising given how lousy the sound effects are, and how often the short choice of moody tunes repeat themselves. Twin Peaks, a 1990s television show, is one of Deadly Premonition's many sources of inspiration. The game's progressively complicated murder mystery bears the imprint of David Lynch's strange masterwork. Instead of a log, there's an elderly log lady-like lass who carries an ever-cooling pot filled with God knows what. Instead of a log, Francis York Morgan, like Dale Cooper from Twin Peaks, is a coffee-loving FBI agent who has weird nightmares. Both the game and the drama are set in a tiny rural village and revolve around the death of a lovely young girl. You get the idea. But as you get to know its endearing lead character and supporting ensemble, Deadly Premonition is far from a ripoff. The plot has a surprising number of twists. Yet, the story is well-paced, so the mind-boggling revelations never feel overpowering. Even if you complete the numerous side tasks that further flesh out the quirky cast, a few questions remain unsolved. However, this is a novel that is more concerned with creating a twisted other world rather than answering every issue it poses. The knotted strands feel oddly appropriate, as if in this twisted world, some things don't need to be explained. They just are. York talks about cheesy 80s movies with his imaginary sidekick, Zach, and sits at an incredibly long table with the wrinkled owner of the local hotel, while York drives about town and swoons at close-ups of stunning blondes. A repetitive but funny soundtrack plays on. Despite the frequent winking, Deadly Premonition takes you on an emotional roller coaster. There are graphic scenes that will disturb you, as well as personal revelations that will affect you, either because you didn't expect them, or because what you thought you know is turned on its head. You can't argue that any one aspect of Deadly Premonition's mechanics is particularly good. You spend some of your time shooting at a small group of lurching spirit things, some wielding pitchforks or other weapons, and a few brandishing shotguns. These thugs wander around with strange animations, occasionally teleporting a few steps ahead to get a good wallop. And they don't put up much of a fight. Even the few major fights aren't very difficult. However, the numerous confrontations with stringy-haired, wall-crawling ghost females may irritate you. Not because they're difficult, but because they go on for far too long. The control will be your main source of frustration, as mentioned previously. The fighting isn't filthy, but it's also not interesting or sophisticated. The same may be said for the majority of Deadly Premonition's various components. You drive through Greendale in a variety of oafish automobiles, Grand Theft Auto style, albeit there is a method to enhance them, if not eliminate the need for them entirely. The most distant zoom level on the main map is still far too close to be practical. Some of the quick-time button-mashing events are awkward to the extreme, and figuring out how side missions operate is a challenge in and of itself. Despite the issues, Deadly Premonition comes together because it does the unexpected all the time. You'll be required, out of the blue, to undertake acts you haven't done yet in the game. When a terrifying Grim Reaper appears and waggles his finger at you, you have no choice but to hide in a locker and hold your breath while the screen becomes picture-in-picture. You take pop quizzes that summarize the happenings of the day. You have to solve puzzles that include tree paintings, chess references, and ornamental deer heads. You go document hunting, have your suits cleaned, and follow suspects in the most visible car possible. However, the residents of Greenvale go about their daily lives as the clock continues to tick. They go to work, have food, go for walks, and pay each other visits. They invite you to join them for lunch, and tease you with details about their past. The last chapters have their own surprises, dumping additional activities in your hands that are crucial to the plot. A moment of gameplay caught on film, like any other story sequence, may appear shabby at best. Despite the creaks and squeaks of the old gears whirling beneath, the stream of strange surprises in this novel will keep you hooked. Deadly Premonition may surprise you at first if you haven't played a game in the last 5 years. Characters emote with an awkward expressiveness at times, and fields are covered in low-resolution grass textures. Yards are surrounded by boxy hedges that clang like oil barrels when you crash into them. And while the murder victim appears to be a gorgeous beauty, the face on her character's modeling is one that only a mother could love. Despite all that, many pieces were clearly constructed with care. Electrifying scenes in an art museum and a restroom, for example, make such effective use of color and filming angles that the technical faults are scarcely noticeable. Later chapters stand out because to a series of colorful boss fights and a blurry flashback. Although you'll have to use your creativity to fill in some of the blanks, this low-budget game makes the crude graphics matter when they're needed the most. Deadly Premonition isn't a pretty or developed game. It's easy to disregard it because of its unattractive appearance, antiquated control scheme, and general lack of user-friendliness. However, in this situation, the broader picture outweighs the defects and quirks. Here's a game that borrows ideas from a variety of sources while being completely unique, and just when you think you figured it out, pulls another rabbit out of its hat. In fact, for only $20, you receive dozens of hours of rabbit tricks, making this a fantastic value for anyone looking for something a little unusual. And Deadly Premonition is unmistakably unique.
Sacrificed. Blood purge. Blood purge. Blood. Blood. I need blood!
Blessing or a curse? You decide. Deadly Premonition 2, A Blessing in Disguise. It's actually complex to discuss the original Deadly Premonition. On a basic level, it's a game that's frequently dismissed, wrongly as most would say, as a joke, a so bad it's good experience deserving of a chuckle and nothing more. But enough of that. I would say that it's also excellent, a masterpiece, brave, ambitious, intensely heartfelt, and a game that strives so high and excels despite, not because of, its imperfection. Part of that is owing to the original's marvelous sense of place. Its small-town murder mystery may have adapted generously from Twin Peaks, but also its open-world setting, the eternally gray, pine-scented motorways and back roads of Greenvale, Washington, felt both distinct and favorably lively as its grand cast of wonderfully realized quirky residents who went about their everyday routine in real time, disclosing their secrets to anyone with the curiosity to follow and obstruct them. Deadly Premonition 2, A Blessing in Disguise is, at first, just as swervingly wobbly and astonishingly enthralling as its predecessor. Never one to let a seemingly meager budget limit his ambition, designer Hidetaka Suehiro this time serves up both a prequel and sequel to his cult classic hit. Knowledge of the first game's events is certainly helpful, and as the story unfolds in 2019, time has not done any favors to Agent Morgan. A retired Morgan, now gray-haired, wild-eyed, and wrecked by cancer, clashed bitterly with Aaliyah Davis, a Nietzsche-quoting intelligence officer who comes to his residence on the trail of a new drug, Saint Rouge, ultimately reigniting remembrances of an ill-fated homicide case that took place 14 years prior in the Louisiana town of Le Carré. Deadly Premonition 2's main story takes place in Francis Zach Morgan's apartment in Boston, Massachusetts, in 2019, 10 years after the events of the first game. In Le Carré, FBI Special Agent Aaliyah Davis and her partner, Simon Jones, question a sickly Zach about his role in the murder of 16-year-old Lisa Clarkson, the granddaughter of the powerful Clarkson family. Zach describes how he and his alter ego York, who was developed as a result of a childhood drama, arrived in Le Carré to look into the links between the murder and Saint Rouge, a powerful street narcotic. Morgan's original persona is ultimately recovered as we're transported back to 2005 to witness the case firsthand. He's as warm, humorous, and as intelligent as ever. analyzing his favorite 80s films in Patrick Bateman-esque detail one moment, and a violent death with optimistic enthusiasm the next. And his honest optimism is at the core of it all once more. And it's here that Deadly Premonition 2 settles into a pattern of bizarre open-world adventure and survival horror action that fans of the previous game will recognize. The game's survival horror scenes, which sent York into a bleak parallel world to explore a linear layout of identical hallways while hunting down 3 AI-deficient monster kinds, are no less awkward and basic than those of their predecessor, although there are far less this time around. Instead, you'll spend the majority of your time out in the open world, performing largely routine things for Le Carré's new cast of appealing oddballs, including a local sheriff who narrates his life like a movie trailer voiceover, and a hotel owner with a strong work ethic, with the occasional quiz-style investigative section thrown in to further the mystery. Thankfully, the original's incredibly awkward, unending driving segments are replaced with something a little more cheery here. York now roams the city on his handy skateboard, monologuing merrily and infuriatingly repetitively along the way. And there are also stylistic positive changes. The diversified soundtrack is terrific, both wide-ranging and refreshingly whistle-free, and the comic book graphic style is a deliciously fitting upgrade to its fairly dismal predecessor, adding a stronger sense of warmth and richness to the universe. Its biggest flaw is a jumbled story that's badly told, where its predecessor deftly held its ground as its murder mystery unfolded, making the town and its citizens feel central to the proceeding, occasionally heartbreakingly so. Neither Le Carré nor the town's inhabitants have much of an effect. Although there is a basic time-based movement for Le Carré's inhabitants, it is negligible at best, and most characters are passive to the haphazard plot, all but disappearing after the first act. It is unlikely that we may get to see a third installment of this series. However, the director Swery has been working on a game called The Good Life, an interesting everyday life RPG, murder mystery adventure, which now has a release date and will be available on Xbox One, PlayStation 4, Switch, and PC on October 15th. The Good Life was expected to be released in Q4 2019, after it successfully surpassed its Kickstarter target in 2018. However, the planned launch date was pushed back to spring 2020, then to summer 2021, before finally being pushed back to this fall. Players can pass the time by sowing and harvesting of crops, preparing food recipes, shopping, and saving money to revamp their home and garden, similar to other life simulation games. However, Swery has previously teased other, slightly less typical avenues for lucrative adventuring, such as sheep shearing, milk delivery, jam making, gardening, or working as a bartender, casino dealer, or cryptocurrency miner. In the midst of it all, a gruesome murder, along with other mysteries, must be solved, and the players must race against the clock to follow multiple leads, either using Naomi's, the central character in this new game, photojournalistic skills, or more magical means, such as changing into a cat to nimbly traverse the town, or sniffing out clues like a dog. Nothing, in the end, is likely to dissuade fans of the first Deadly Premonition from anticipating a sequel. Technical flaws, shaky game design, and dubious plot lines have been the established price of entry for over a decade. But while the first game succeeded despite those flaws, serving up an intricately executed and surprisingly sentimental murder mystery that paced through its universe and its residents, seemingly in real time, Agent Morgan is unquestionably Deadly Premonition 2's saving grace, and people would gladly bear the game's frequent monotony just to spend more time with him. It's just bad that his long-awaited return wasn't accompanied by a more uplifting event. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one, and be safe. Thanks, everyone.